I'm not only honored by this award, I'm humbled to be here. And I think anybody would be humbled hearing Dr. Tansey introduced. I meant that in a nice way. I thought that was going to go over as a big laugh line. Is Senator Ayotte still here? She has left. You noticed that she had a hard time she talked about how everybody else had done these important things in terms of medicine, rock star scientists, and legislation. God bless her, she's a very gracious senator. All she could say is, and I'm glad to be here with Scott Simon too. I have by far the shortest biography. And it's not because I'm being modest. I got to tell you, we stretched as much as we could in there. But I do feel humbled to accept the same award as people of such distinction as Senator Ayotte and Representative DeGette and Dr. Tansey. Although not to play this card too much, I have to tell you, Dr. Tansey, at first I was going to send regrets from my wife. Speaking personally, I'm kind of glad she's not here. I would take a lot of ribbing about the indispensable part once we got home. She called me up a few years ago. Our daughter, who is now 12, was having a play date with one of her friends, and this was in Washington, D.C., and I guess it came to the part where she was asking this little boy what his father did for a living, and I guess he said something like, "Well, my father travels all over the world to bring clean water to the millions of people who need it, which saves the lives of millions of people who don't have to face disease because of the important work that my father does. What does your father do?" And our daughter Elise said, "He talks." So I feel particularly inauthentic for standing here tonight, having just written a book. It doesn't stack up at all, but I do thank you for the opportunity to say a few things about maybe something that I was blessed, and I do consider it a blessing to have spent that time with my mother. The last days in the intensive care unit of a hospital in Chicago. A few of the things that I may have learned through the wisdom she revealed to me, certainly throughout her life, but I think as it kind of got compacted hard, almost like a diamond in those last few days. And certainly what I have, to a degree, been able to learn from people who, because of the attention that my mother got, the laughter that she brought into so many people's lives, the wisdom, the light she gave to so many people. I'm glad to have been contacted by a number of people really around the world and have continued to learn from them. The morning that my mother's ashes were sealed into a wall, one of my hands had a terrible telltale tremble, and I tweeted, "Day of my mother's internment, left hand quavered so much, daughter had to help with buttons. Glimpse of my future." A reminder that if we're blessed, this is something we're all going to have to confront. One of the many blessings I received by spending the last days of my mother's life with her in that intensive care unit was that she could finally tell me without hesitation or humiliation what it had been like for her to live in what she called the land of the old. We hear so much data these days that decry the disproportionate amount of money and attention that we spend on senior citizens. Old people are identified as a demographic group, a market, or a political lobby quite often. But my mother helped me to see how oldsters, which was her term, often feel invisible and powerless. Old age is the toughest gig any of us will ever get. Your body starts fighting you, is how my mother put it. It wasn't just the grumble of a beautiful woman. My mother had once been a showgirl. The grumble of a beautiful woman who didn't like her hair turning wispy or didn't like her knees squishing when she walked. It was the scores of ways in which each and every day, in some small way that became huge, she felt helpless or useless. My mother said that she had jars of mustard and spaghetti sauce getting dusty on the shelves in her kitchen because she didn't have the strength in her hand to open the lids. She feared to buy a new comb because it was encased in a tough plastic blister that she would have to hack apart with a kitchen knife. I've got to be Jack the Ripper, she said, just to comb my hair. She got prescriptions for dozens of pills, which she often couldn't take on time because she couldn't pry off the protective lids. Child-proof, she said, and impossible for people to open who really need them. Buttoning a blouse could make her feel as if she just played the Boston Bruins. My mother said that she wanted to get out of the hospital if only to march into a nearby store to return the latest model of phone that we had gotten her. You can guess what this store is. I know it can give you email and photos and games and search civilization for you, but I want a phone, my mother said. All of the passwords it demands, what kind of Einstein do you have to be? Now, my wife and I had brought her to the store with all the bright young minds who run around in shirts that say genius. I don't mind saying, maybe Dr. Tansey can wear a shirt like that, but usually not the kid in the Apple store. My mother asked, and what, dear, qualifies them as a genius? Did they discover a cure for cancer or something like that? The young geniuses were eager to help my mother, but they would chuckle and smile when she asked something like, and what do you mean by an OIS operating system? What is that? So they talked to my wife and to me instead, as if my 83-year-old mother was a child for whom we were buying a pair of shoes. And when she heard a young genius say, your mother is so cute, and they would say it right in front of us as if indeed she were a 3-year-old, my mother felt demeaned. Kids need you for everything, my mother said. Then they grow up and they think you know nothing. Old people are vulnerable to telemarketers and salespeople who sense their loneliness and manipulate their confusion. Some cleaning or repair people filch from them, thinking that old people won't notice or assume they're getting feeble, or will be too mortified to say that they didn't notice. If oldsters like opera, Oprah, the nightly news, NPR, Sunday morning, or NCIS, they have to overhear pundits prate on about how no one likes a dying audience, even as those people providing those programs crave their devotion and in public broadcasting their donations. And every few weeks, many old folks lose someone they love. My mother said this was the toughest part for her growing old. Imagine how that sours your mood. Imagine how that darkens your outlook. I don't want to answer the phone, my mother told me. It's usually some young voice saying, hi, Pat, I'm Betsy's niece, and I'm sorry to tell you. Old people may have loving family around them, but they can grow isolated and lonely as they lose the people they love who have been their companions in life. That's why we can be so crabby, my mother told me. We have to strain to do the simplest things. But someone who's old and lonely has a lifetime to offer. We've gone to bed every night since our 70s thinking, maybe I won't wake up. That's why it's hard to sleep. That's why we're cranky and impatient. But we go to sleep anyway because we've learned what's really important in life. That's why people should talk to us. I don't pass on what I learned from my mother in her last days to call for a new government program, or fewer, for that matter, although I've heartened to hear the calls for support here of NIH and other groups. I just hope I've learned that even after we've lost our grandparents and parents, it's enriching and wise to make older people a part of our lives each and every day in our families. They've been around. They have the matchless perspective of someone who looks death in the face and keeps going. They can tell us with a wisdom that young people can't earn for a while when we're being silly, when we're too serious, when we're lazy or working too much, and when we're not being fair to someone. They can tell us with the peerless experience of years of longing, of loss, regret, cheers, tears, grief and responsibility, what really counts in life. And for that matter, what isn't really worth the worry. Why would we let older people keep all of that insight and that wealth of humanity simply to themselves. The aging have a genius for life that's meant to be shared with all of us. I thank you for the work you do to try and make that possible. I thank you for the honor that you've given me tonight. I'm very grateful.